Medieval games. You love them, we love them. Now, our definition of it for this video is a bit broad, but if it involves castles, swords, battles, even a bit of fantasy, we're in. Now, please keep in mind, stuff like Elder Scrolls 6, Dragon Age 4, maybe even that new Fable, don't seem like they're going to be 2022 games, so we're going to have to skip those, but we still got a lot of cool games to break down, so let's get started off with number 10. Thymesia, which I think is how it's pronounced, is an action RPG set in a fantasy medieval world ridden by a plague. Now, you play as the mysterious Corvus, who seemingly has amnesia, but looks cool as hell, kind of like a weird bloodborne plague doctor guy. And as him, you venture through a world and engage in fast-paced and brutal combat that definitely, at least here at first glance, looks really challenging. You're actually wielding disease, apparently, as like weapons and abilities that you get from defeating bosses. It's a pretty cool and weird concept if you ask us. Now, there's an upgrade system for the moveset and for your weapons, and it seems like you might end up getting faster and faster. This game just looks promising. It looks pretty, it's gross and creepy, and intense on the gameplay front. Now, it doesn't have an exact date yet, but it is slated as coming soon. Now, next over at number 9, we have Project Awakening. Yes, Project Awakening. Remember this? It was announced way back in 2018, and it's developed and published by Psy Games, the people behind Grand Blue Fantasy. Now, this game made waves when it was announced because it was positioned as a high-end PS4 game with influences like Dragon's Dogma and Monster Hunter. You know, games that take some fantastic sword and sorcery style stuff and amp it up and inject it with some Japanese influences. Now, this Project Awakening is said to be an open-world medieval fantasy game with some RPG elements and multiplayer, where you venture into this big world and kill stuff like monsters and men, possibly cooperatively. Now, this project went dark for a while and has actually recently resurfaced. That's why we're talking about it. In November of 2021, the developers hosted a tech conference where they showcased the game once again, and after so many years, we finally have some new footage. Now, it's running on their own proprietary game engine here, and the game looks immense and detailed. But unfortunately, the new look we have wasn't really necessarily intended completely for consumers. It's about their tech and their tool set, so it's not too much to go on still, sadly. But we know, once again, that it exists and that seemingly it is still being worked on. So we think that's a plus. There's a reason why people stuck with thinking about this one, though. That initial debut trailer was so cool and so promising. We're really hoping we see this in 2022, presumably on PS5. Now, next over at number 8, Crimson Desert. This is an open-world action-adventure game from Pearl Abyss, the people behind Black Desert Online. So if you've ever even given BDO like a glance, you know that it seems like they know what they're doing, from combat to cool characters to graphics. Now, Crimson Desert here first had a gameplay reveal trailer at the 2020 Game Awards, and we saw an adventure game that very much gave off similar vibes and stuff to Black Desert, but it took place in a vast, open, more medieval style world with some brutal swordplay and combat and a cool looking main character. Now, you are in the lands of Pywell trying to survive along with a bunch of other mercenaries in this region split in two by war. And in this world, there are brutal kings, massive scary monsters, and lots of mercenaries looking for work. That sounds like a video game recipe for something cool. So let's see how this goes. It's slated to be a multi-platform release, and we hope we get to see it this year. Now, next over at number 7, we have Knights of Honor II Sovereign. This is published by THQ Nordic and developed by Black Sea Games, and it's a medieval real-time grand strategy game. Now, when you hear grand strategy game, you might think, oh, dad game, but that doesn't really mean what it used to, man. These types of games have so much to love. With Knights of Honor II, you're fighting for control of Europe, so you build up a royal court and do some strategizing. You know, go for the money and the commerce and trade, or do some diplomacy stuff, or just straight up conquer and engage in real-time combat systems. It also has a multiplayer mode if you're looking for a real challenge, because fans of these types of games go hard. Now, next over at number 6, Manor Lords. It's a strictly PC medieval strategy game that has all the large-scale tactical battles in the fields with all the soldiers and the formations and all that stuff, but it also brings in some complex and realistic city building. Not only is the game very nice looking, clearly, but it also seems slickly designed. The game emphasizes the convenience of changing battle formations with the drag of a mouse, and also just quickly and conveniently sketching out roads and walls with a snap-together system. Apparently, all of the growing and building is based around an in-game economy, heavily relying on trade routes and settlement agreements, which I guess is where a lot of the conflict is going to come from. The game will feature weather systems, different seasons, famine, disease, danger. It's really ambitious. It's straight up hand-built by a solo developer, and they are open to feedback, according to the Steam Early Access page. We really hope this thing meets its ambitions. We expect to see more of Manor Lords very soon. Now, next over at number 5, we have A Plague Tale: Requiem. This is the sequel to one of my favorite games the year it released. A Plague Tale, the original, was an incredible story set in a medieval world ridden by a plague that kind of goes a little bit over the top, a little fantastical, with horrific swarms of deadly rats and dead people and just misery everywhere. It was a really grimy, gross game that also had moments of just sheer beauty and raw emotion, and the next game really is probably going to take that even further, with the characters aging up a little bit, with Amicia, the main character, being more of a badass and seemingly more capable of combat. Considering the last game didn't really emphasize too much combat, we might see more of it here, but also a really interesting and beautiful new setting. Some returning characters recognized from the trailer, and also some new characters. We don't know where this one's really gonna go, but considering how much we all really like the first game here, we're definitely jumping into this one as soon as it releases. There's a couple of new things coming to the gameplay and story here that I'd like to talk about, but it's kind of spoiler territory for the first game, so if you haven't played that, definitely do, so you're ready in time for A Plague Tale: Requiem when it releases in 2022. Next, over at number 4, we have Diplomacy is Not an Option. Now, not only does this game have a cool name, but also just a cool concept. You play as this minor lord, and like the name suggests, diplomacy is not an option. So the focus here is on warfare and defending your castles and your areas. Not only are you battling and defending your walls from all sorts of attackers and ballistas and trebuchets, you also have to worry about keeping your soldiers fed and healthy, the dead carted away to avoid disease, and keeping the homes behind the walls safe. There's resources to manage, an economy to engage in, and as you get more powerful, you can slaughter dudes with all kinds of cool weapons and tech, including magic. This game just dropped in early access, and there was a demo available, so check it out, especially if you're looking for something with a bit more of a fun, simple art style. Next, over at number 3, we have Total War Warhammer III. This is Creative Assembly's newest joint, some of the masters of RTS and turn-based strategy. If you know the classic Total War games, you know they're an excellent hybrid of strategy gameplay systems with tight resource management and building, and then fun, drawn-out battles. Total War, set in the Warhammer universe, is like the icing on the cake at this point, and this third entry is going to hammer that point home. The campaign is the main focus, but details are still kind of slight. Now, we know it's double the size of the second game's campaign, and it'll take place in the realm of chaos with new races, and the Ogre Kingdoms being an early adopter exclusive. So, like, if you pre-order the game or you get it in the first week of release, you get access to that race. Now, this game is going to be a big one. These games are absolutely a ton of fun. Even if you're a noob to Warhammer lore, I loved the first one. Yeah, this is out in February. Next, over at number 2, we have Avowed. This is Obsidian's next game that they're making specifically for Microsoft and Xbox Studios. As of right now, details are slight, and we're getting a little ballsy by including it on this list for a 2022 game, to be honest. But Obsidian really knows how to make RPGs. They know how to build out cool systems and have really cool character and dialogue and choices options. You've seen it from so many of their games, from The Outer Worlds, more recently, way back to stuff like Fallout New Vegas. They make good stuff, and this time around, it looks like they're going full-on fantasy. A lot of people are talking about this being like some sort of Obsidian version of Elder Scrolls. I think it's going to be a bit more than that, but we don't really have too much to go on yet other than this brief teaser trailer showing just typical kind of medieval fantasy stuff. That being said, our expectations are set pretty high just because of the pedigree of the studio, and hopefully we'll have more to talk about soon. Now down to number 1, we have Elden Ring. Of course, we were going to include it. We're probably a little predictable at this point. And say what you will, this may not be the most traditionally medieval game on this list, but you are a dude with a sword and armor in a fantasy world with dragons and castles, so we're going for it. And we're really excited for Elden Ring because we love the Soulsborne formula, and the way they're applying it to an open world here seems pretty interesting. The way dungeons are going to be laid out, of course, the game's difficulty, the way all of the abilities are going to work. It just seems like a really good shakeup or continuation and evolution of the Soulsborne formula. These developers, From Software, at this point, they know how to build boss encounters, enemy types, gorgeous, beautiful, and intricate level design. The list goes on and on. Hidetaka Miyazaki with the story and everything that he comes up with, of course, with George R.R. Martin really developing the initial concept for the world. There has been like an ungodly amount of hype for this one. I think it's gotten a little out of control, but it's still definitely one of our most anticipated games, and we're going to be diving into this one deep. Those are some medieval games that we're looking forward to this year, but we have a few bonus games, including V Rising, which is going to be like a medieval fantasy vampire game. It's about you hunting for blood and building up your own castle and stuff. A very cool concept. Shifting gears a bit, The Iron Oath is a turn-based tactical RPG. You move through an overworld map, doing turn-based battles and recruiting and building up characters in this interesting twist. Time actually progresses, so the overworld will change, but along with that, so will your characters. According to the developers, the characters that you build up will age, retire, and eventually die, meaning you're always going to be kept on your toes in terms of strategy. Babylon's Fall, which is actually a new Platinum Games game. It looks a little bit different for them, but at least in terms of the combat, they are still very much doing their thing. And this is definitely high fantasy, but there's swords, there's chainmail, there's armor, and it has potential. You know, say what you want about the structure of the game. At the very least, Platinum Games knows combat. Forspoken, where you play as a regular everyday woman thrust into a fantastical new universe. She has these kind of mage-like powers, and you blast and fly and dodge and float across an open environment in a very gorgeous looking game. We also have the Lord of the Rings Gollum, which you could say Middle-earth is pretty medieval, right? And you know what? We'll give it a nod, God of War Ragnarok. Hopefully we see that one this year, but who knows? Anyway, these are the medieval games worth checking out this year. There are a lot out there, to be honest. It was hard to condense them into 10, so we want to hear yours down in the comments. If you got your own top 5 for some medieval games, I know other people are probably coming to this video looking for that type of stuff. Help us out. Throw some stuff down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video though, and maybe learned a thing or two about a new game, click on the like button's all you gotta do. It genuinely helps us out. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.